embattled Congressman Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz was one of the very few members in the entire Congress who bothered to stand up against permanent Washington on behalf of his constituents.
Matt Gaetz right now, he's a problem for the Democratic Party, and he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him.
If you stand for the flag and kneel in prayer, if you want to build America up and not burn her to the ground, then welcome, my fellow patriots. You are in the right place. This is the movement for you.
You ever watch this guy on television? It's like a machine. Matt Gaetz.
I'm a canceled man in some corners of the internet. Many days I'm a marked man in Congress, a wanted man by the deep state. They aren't really coming for me. They're coming for you. I'm just in the way.
Welcome to Firebrand. I'm Matt Gaetz. Big media lies to you. Big tech monetizes you. Big business steals from you. And big government steals for itself. This is a platform exposing truth in power and politics. Join me behind the scenes for debates and insights driving Washington and your life. If you know me, you know I don't mind taking on Republicans and Democrats. We are no shills for conservative ink here. And Democrats sometimes have good ideas that many Republicans are either too dogmatic or too corrupt to support. It's true. The America First movement demands supporters who are informed and active. I'm here to give you details nobody else has and a strategy to use them. I'm going to make you the smartest person in every political debate. And we're going to use argument and information to take back power and save our country. To win the battle, our side needs warriors, tough operatives. Our opponents know this, and they try to pick us off one by one. They tried with a brave Congressman Devin Nunes when he told President Trump that our own government was spying on him. Nunes was pursued by the Ethics Committee, and his staff threatened with criminal prosecution.
The idea that the House Ethics Committee is taking up a formal investigation of whether Devin Nunes broke the rules of the House.
The account claimed Rosenstein threatened to turn the tables on the committee regarding the Russia probe. Let me just add that watching the Deputy Attorney General launch a sustained personal attack against a congressional staffer in retaliation for vigorous oversight was astonishing and disheartening. Also, having the nation's #1 for these matters law enforcement officer threaten to subpoena your calls and your emails was downright chilling.
Is it possible that the Republican chairman of the House Intel Committee has been compromised by the Russians? Is it possible that they actually have a Russian agent running the House Intel Committee?
They tried with America's best congressman, Jim Jordan, attempting unsuccessfully to link him to sexual abuse. Jim Jordan fights for the weak. He doesn't prey on them. But that didn't stop the lying media.
A college wrestling referee says he complained to Ohio State University's wrestling coaches about sexual misconduct by one of the team doctors, but they did nothing about it. One of the assistant coaches at the time was current Congressman Jim Jordan.
Accusers believe it was known by Republican Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan at the time, an assistant wrestling coach at the university from 1986 to 1994. Jordan denies knowing anything about the allegations before accusers spoke out this spring.
If there had been any reports of abuse, I would have reported it.
It was all a deep fake. Then there's me. March 31st, April Fool's Eve. I stood in the Fort Walton Beach airport as my chief of staff delivered the news. The New York Times would soon be reporting that I was being investigated for child sex trafficking. Soon Insider would publish that I use hookup websites. Had I brought a 17-year-old across state lines? Of course, these things are all totally false. Verifiably false, actually, printed with malice, a court may find. The piece from the New York Times reporter assigned to the Department of Justice left no doubt where the leak came from. They take leaks and embroider lies onto them. It's actually a crime to leak stuff like this, but that never stopped them when they wanted Trump's scalp, and they probably still do. But I wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first I was learning of false allegations of child sex trafficking. Weeks before, a man of mystery connected to the intelligence community named Bob Kent texted my father. He told my dad there were pictures of me with child prostitutes, and for $25 million, he could make all my problems go away, as he admits here.
Mr. Gaetz, text message from you. I would like to talk with you immediately about the current federal investigation and the indictment that is about to be filed against your son. I have a plan that can make his future legal and political problems go away. You sent that text message?
I did, yes.
Why did you put it that way, that there was an indictment about to be filed against his son, and why did you tee up the legal problems?
Matt Gaetz was in need of, or if the allegations are true, he's in need of some goodwill from the government. I'm in need of a sponsor to fund the rescue project.
He needed money, tens of millions, and he was pitching hard to my dad that I needed help, the type of help only he could provide. Some of you might call it an offer you can't refuse. Who is Bob Kent? Where's he even getting this stuff? And who is he working with to shake down my dad on a pile of lies? This man, David McGee, is a former DOJ official. That's interesting. And this man, Stephen Alford, is a con man who's actually been convicted of felonies and served time in federal penitentiary. An intel officer, Kent, a felon, Alford, and a former DOJ official, McGee, team up to shake down a congressman and my family. But it's all on the up and up, according to the intel guy, because the DOJ guy vouched for the felon.
That one of the guys who you were working with on this and approaching the Gates has a criminal record for being a fraudster. Why would you be associating with somebody like that?
So I was contacted by David McGee in October, and he asked me to meet with somebody, with Stephen Alford, because Alford wanted to help with Levinson and believed that he can get him out. Now, after the rescue attempt fell apart in July, I had no contact with Dave after that. I said, sorry, it didn't work out. We went forward. He wished me, best of luck in my future endeavors. And then when he contacted me in October, he asked me, is it possible to rescue, is Levinson still alive, and is it possible to rescue him? So I went back to the network and I asked a question, and they said, yes, we think he may be alive, but you can't do it the way you did it last time. You have to go from the top down this time. So, and when Dave vouched for Stephen, that was good enough for me.
I must say, it's quite the con. Step one, find people willing to make false, self-serving allegations. That's exactly what former DOJ official Bruce Orr did with Christopher Steele and the Steele dossier. Step two, use the leverage of an investigation to get someone to do what you want them to do. Amazingly, the Christopher Steele archetype character in my story, Bob Kent, admits that they have actually run the same grift on other people.
As I said, Mr. Gaetz was in need of some goodwill, and we've worked with multiple people over the years, and all of them have been in similar situations. I mean, a lot of them have been, facing indictments or all looking for goodwill from the U.S. government.
Go to people facing trouble and demand millions from them to rescue a man named Bob Levinson in Iran. Where have I heard this before?
Bob Levinson, 30-year veteran of the CIA, held now for 11 years in Iran. We learn more details tonight about the efforts of a Russian billionaire, Oleg Deripaska, now on the U.S. sanctions list, to secure his release on two different occasions, spending $25 million. It's like, why are they smearing this particular person? I mean, he's someone who spent $25 million to try to get that patriot Bob Levinson out of Iran.
Yeah, there's a black hat, white hat, black hat syndrome with him. He's a bad guy for a while, probably treated that way. Then he's a great guy, let him in the country, no problem. And then with the same evidence that's been there all this time, now he's suddenly a bad guy again.
Trying to help Bob Levinson get out of Iran, a 30-year veteran of the CIA who we left there. He tried to get him out 2 times, spent $25 million, as you said.
That's right.
Had a jet waiting on the tarmac, pulled back by the State Department for some weird reason.
$25 million. Bob Levinson. What are the odds that Robert Mueller would make the exact same pitch to get the exact same dollar amount to recover the exact American spy that Bob Kent went to my dad with? Christopher Steele built a dossier of lies about Trump. Kent built a dossier of lies about me. In both cases, the lies are used to create leverage. You can see the sheepish look of a busted man all over the face of Bob Kent.
What was your point in telling Gaetz's father about what you had heard about the trouble that his son was in? You could have just went to him and said, help Bob Levinson. If we find him, it'll be good for your son. You could have left it at that. You didn't. How come, Mr. Kent?
I wanted to meet with Matt Gaetz. Believe that he had the ability to raise the money quickly. And yes, I did put that in there as a teaser.
Deripaska took the teaser. Deripaska pays the money to Mueller. Then the deep state accuses him anyway of collusion in the Russia hoax. And they never save Levinson. So somebody got $25 million and didn't even do the mission. Was it even a real mission with Mueller then? Or Kent now? Or is the legend of Levinson now just a way to use the FBI to shake down political opponents? It has been nearly 4 months since anonymous lies were spread everywhere about me. Now they're falling like a house of cards. Insider.com ran this story, making the specific allegation that I met a woman on a website called Seeking Arrangements and paid for sex. Rolling Stone also directly linked me to the Seeking Arrangements website to smear and embarrass me. The problem for these two publications, and many others, is that I've never met anyone on Seeking Arrangements or any other dating website. There's nothing wrong with meeting people online, just not my thing. I've always been more of an IRL kind of guy. I expected to have to slug this fact out in the media. They'd say I was on Seeking Arrangements, I'd say I wasn't. Everyone would live in their own cocoon. But amazingly, and by the grace of God, which I undoubtedly need regularly, Seeking Arrangements has put out a statement directly refuting the false reporting. I've never had an account on Seeking Arrangements, and now the whole world knows it definitively. In separate litigation that doesn't involve me, Tiger Woods' ex-mistress is suing Seeking Arrangements. She's alleging they didn't pay her because they were dealing with bad Matt Gaetz press. So to defend against that charge, Seeking Arrangements pointed out the obvious fact that they have no connection to me and I have no connection to them. Rolling Stone and Insider.com have yet to retract their stories. We demand again that they do so. Litigation is forthcoming. People make false accusations and tell crazy stories all the time, especially about famous people. Yet not one woman has accused me of misconduct of any kind. Not one. Joe Biden has more on-record accusers than I do. Remember Tara Reade? She has a graphic, specific story of Senator Biden pinning her against a wall, sticking his hand in her underpants, and digitally penetrating her. Where's the sisterhood of the traveling pantsuit to believe her? There is another element of pattern recognition regarding the FBI when they zero in on a political target. When the FBI wanted to spy on Trump, absent an evidentiary predicate, they leaked information to Yahoo News, which they themselves referenced in a justification for their ongoing investigation. Though I was far heavier at the time, I pointed it out in this interview.
Well, Harris, we now know the facts of what happened. The Democratic Party hired the Perkins Law Firm. The Perkins Law Firm hired Fusion GPS. Fusion GPS hired Christopher Steele to go and dig up the dossier. And then they hired Nellie Orr, the wife of Bruce Orr, to get the fake dossier from a political environment into the bloodstream of the intelligence community and to convert it into an intelligence document. And what's most outrageous to me is that this fake dossier was so unreliable that the way that it was validated to the FISA court was a Yahoo News article written by Michael Isikoff, planted by Christopher Steele. So Christopher Steele wrote the fake dossier, and then he went and planted fake news stories to validate the dossier. The FBI was going to pay Christopher Steele. They had authorized payment, but then when they found out he was talking to the media and that he was unreliable, they canceled payment to him. But even after canceling payment to Christopher Steele, the FBI and the Department of Justice reauthorized the FISA warrant to spy on American citizens based on a political document that had its origins at the Democratic National Committee.
Step 1, leak information to the media that isn't true. Step 2, use the media as a basis to keep smearing political opponents. This is Captain Nathan Nelson. He served as my director of military affairs until he was offered his dream job, to run a nonprofit in support of our military families. But the FBI heard the rumor that he left because I was cavorting with prostitutes. That is a total lie as you will see here.
Last Wednesday afternoon, 2 members of the FBI came to my house unannounced to question me about allegations surrounding Congressman Gaetz. They told me that members of the media reached out to them asserting that I had previous knowledge of Congressman Gaetz' involvement in illegal activities. They asserted that because of that knowledge, I resigned my position as the Director of Military Affairs. I'm here this morning to state that nothing could be further from the truth. Neither I nor any other member of Congressman Gaetz' staff had any knowledge of illegal activities. I've known the congressman for over 6 years when he was a state rep in the Florida House. I worked with him for 4 years as his Director of Military Affairs. Everybody here in Northwest Florida and the defense community knows that I had a planned departure. I left to continue supporting the military mission in a private capacity, helping to align the Department of Defense, defense industry, and academia for workforce development here in the Panhandle. This baseless claim against me leaves me further convinced that the allegations against Congressman Gaetz are likewise fabricated and merely an attempt to discredit a very vocal conservative.
So now the FBI is running down false rumors from the America Last media? All this while there is real work to do. Co-extortioners David McGee and Stephen Alford are recorded on tapes currently possessed by the FBI and DOJ. They have Kent's messages too. My father made these tapes at the FBI's requests. These tapes prove a lot. Many prove that powerful people are mentioned in the effort to ruin me. They should be released immediately. I've called for this consistently. Now there is one tape we've seen, and it relates to the true enemy of the people, CNN, and how they report on me. Inspiring journalists at Project Veritas obtained secret recordings of a CNN director admitting that the reason CNN keeps running stories to propagandize my life is because I'm a problem for the Democratic Party.
If the agenda, say, is to get Matt Gaetz right now, he's this Republican, he's a problem for the Democratic Party because he's so conservative, right? And he can cause a lot of hiccups in passing of laws. So it would be great for the Democratic Party to get him out. So we're going to keep running those stories to keep hurting him.
I guess I'd rather be targeted for being effective than to be the weak, controlled opposition embodied by too many Republicans in Congress. Sadly, but not surprisingly, following this favorable reporting to me, Twitter removed Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe from their platform permanently. So CNN was lying about me. They got busted doing so to promote their leftist politics, and their lies stay on air while the truth is censored, deplatformed, and buried. And when CNN's flagship program, Cuomo Primetime, invited Bob Kent on air, the guy looked guilty as hell. CNN and big tech don't get to redefine truth regarding my life or yours, and that is why we will always keep fighting back. One more thing about Kent and McGee, the guys purportedly holding this inside information as they attempted to extort my family. They were reportedly paid by the U.S. State Department $75,000, and big media buried it. Pretty swampy, huh? But don't forget, the FBI paid Christopher Steele too. Then they discredited him as a liar, but then they built the Russia hoax on the backs of his dossier of lies. So you see, these things can morph quite a bit. There is much more to this story, and I look forward to sharing it with you. But we will not allow the lies and smears to distract us. America didn't create herself. Patriots carved her out of the wilderness with blood and determination. She won't stay magnificent on autopilot. We must all endeavor to save her now. I appreciate the platform Fox News gave me for years. It allowed me to get key information to the country. I have many friends still at Fox News, and I enjoy our discussions, whether they're on air or off air. That said, Fox News isn't what it used to be. And it probably has something to do with their corporate board member, Paul Ryan. One of my favorite shows on the Fox platform was Lou Dobbs Tonight. Sweet Lou. Lou's like America's angry uncle, politically incorrect, sometimes red in the face, and usually right about stuff. So enjoy some amazing Lou Dobbs highlights.
I've made no secret of my contempt for the politics of Speaker Ryan and his like-minded band of rhinos in the House and the Senate. If Ryan and his rhinos have broken the president's promise to build the wall, if Ryan and his rhinos have their way on open borders and continued chain migration at any level, any form of lottery visas, and further deceives both the president and his voters, Ryan will have betrayed the president and the party, and most certainly will have destroyed the Republican chance of holding their majority. Who is the real nut job there? I can't recall another speaker in modern history working against a president of their own party like Speaker Ryan has done. This man betrayed this president in every way. He lied. He cheated the president out of what should have been easy victories in support of his pledges to the American people. And that one man refused to issue subpoenas, refused to back up the president. His ignorance will live in infamy forever. He has an assured place in the darkest pages of our history.
And took his party over the cliff. Lost 40 seats, gigantic amount.
He's a fraud in every way.
Now that Paul Ryan has concentrated power at Fox News, Lou Dobbs is no longer on air. He can't guide the populist right away from the invade everywhere, invite everyone version of republicanism that sells out to K Street and abandons Main Street. Paul Ryan never used his considerable power as Speaker for Trump's wall or other key immigration reforms, but he was able to use his power at Fox News to cancel the great Lou Dobbs. What a shame. Well, you can't have a show called Firebrand without the great Marjorie Taylor Greene. This Congresswoman has taken America by storm. I hope you enjoy the conversation we were able to have recently.
I am here with the unstoppable Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie, as we travel the country, one of your mantras is people over politics. And I see people react to that in such a strong way. What does that mean to you?
Well, this is what our country was founded on, right? It's for the people. But yet this is what our government has completely conveniently forgotten. Washington, D.C., as you know, Matt, because you've been here longer than me, only focuses on itself. It works for itself and no one else. It's like its own economy. It just works to feed each other. And that's why they raise money. And so they're not for the people at all. We see it every single day. And so that's what I said all over the campaign trail, and I continue to say it, people over politicians. And that's what America First is to me, is serving the people and not the swamp.
And isn't it crazy that there are just these issues that are thought of one way inside of the Beltway of Washington and the exact opposite all over the country? I mean, you think about term limits, you think about these wars that go on forever, you think about the immigration that is totally unchecked at our border. It baffles me that the ecosystem that you described can create like an alternative truth inside of Washington, where like it's going to be great for all of us when America's at war forever, or when we drive down the wages of our people, or when we allow these bureaucrats to have excessive control over people's lives all over America. I mean, you were one of the first voices on Fauci to really call out a power grab. And I remember feeling that way, being out on the ledge with Robert Mueller. You know, when Mueller was first appointed, I was one of the first people to say, wait a second, what is going on here? Why are we deviating from a normal review of what is before us just to go after Trump? But the problem with Fauci was he went after the American way of life. How did you have such clairvoyance on that? How did you know before most Republicans that this was a person in search of power, not delivering helpful health news to the American people?
The exact same way you knew Robert Mueller was after Trump, because it was a political war. Just because I'm one of the people. I'm no different. I've never been elected. I've never held office. I know what Main Street USA says, because that's exactly what I say, and that's how I feel. And it was very obvious to me that when you are hearing people in China trying to say, people that worked in these labs, that this virus escaped a lab. And then we're finding out about the gain of function research and that Dr. Fauci funded it through grants, through a third party, that this money actually went to the Wuhan lab. And then it's easy, everyone. All you have to do is watch videos of Dr. Fauci in his own words, going back years and years and years. This is his dream come true. This is everything that he's watched through a microscope in a petri dish inside of a lab, and now he's getting to see it in real time. It's his own Dr. Frankenstein experiment, but yet it's happening actually right in front of him. And he's like the orchestra master sitting center stage, orchestrating everything. And our government is giving him the power to control our country and people's lives and people's deaths because he funded the gain of function, which created that virus from a virus between animals and turned it into a virus that's transmitted between people. And that's so evil. It's the only term for it can be a bioweapon. And it's using common sense. It's looking at the truth and not through the lens of politics is how it's easy to come to that conclusion because those are the facts.
Well, and it's hard to think of medical power through the lens of political power, right? But these things are now interwoven. You know, when I saw all of these connections between Dr. Fauci and the U.S. government and this research in China that erupted the virus onto the world, it really got me thinking about all of the dangerous connections that our government seems to have with China, whether it is their production of the medical equipment that we need, whether it is the U.S. business investment in China for AI centers,
right,
or other collaborations. How should our government think about its role in disentangling our country from the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, the problem is I think we're entangled.
Yeah,
I truly do.
No doubt.
China is the greatest threat to America. China is the greatest threat to the entire world. But I think that we're already, Mike Pompeo told us. He told us that China is embedded on every single level in our country. They're on our school boards. They're in the PTA. They're in our colleges, universities. Their businesses are functioning within our government, within our all over the country. In my district, I mean, they're all over America. They're buying land. They're buying farms.
So is the policy antidote to that renationalizing business, limiting Chinese investment, a border adjustment tax from China? I mean, those are the policy concepts that I wouldn't have normally thought of without really appreciating the depth of the problem and how interwoven they are.
Right. So one thing I really appreciate about you is you really grabbed a hold of the America First policies early. You literally were one of the first. You're standing right there beside President Trump. Yes, going, yes, America First on every single level. I totally agree with you on that. And I think that's what the American people want. That's the only thing that's going to save us. But we have to take that same approach with China. And I always take people at their word. And when I hear President Xi saying next to President Biden, while President Biden is saying that he's going to reduce carbon emissions down to net zero, and he wants to cut them in half by 2030, and then he wants net zero by 2050. But President Xi is beside him, and he's saying, oh, well, we're going to ramp up carbon emissions to 2035 and maybe later, and then we'll try to bring carbon emissions down to zero by 2060, 10 years after Biden wants the U.S. I listen to them and I go, that man is going to increase carbon emissions to increase his economy, to overtake the United States by 2035 or even sooner.
Well, our leaders are idiots.
They're fools.
I mean, if they believe that we're going to unilaterally disarm the American economy and that's going to result in a better environment,
right?
That's utter nonsense.
Right.
And I think that one of the challenges we have is that the America First agenda that we embrace is often a lobbyist last agenda. Because the lobbyists, they do well in this town when they can use political money to leverage people to vote for things that are not in the best interest of their constituents. Now, you and I are the only members of the Republican conference who do not take corporate PAC money.
Yeah.
And
they never invite me to those.
Well, I canceled
parties.
them before they could cancel me, and I think you
I'm
have
not
built,
interested either.
Well, right, but as a policy matter,
that has liberated us from the things that really do constrain our colleagues. And, maybe just like bring people into a Republican conference meeting. And this is where we all get together. Folks in our districts might think that's about strategy or tactics or about a particular policy matter that we were interested in. But what does it focus on in your experience?
Oh, our conference?
Yeah.
Well, it's been really interesting to me. You see, I'm used to running a business where every single morning our staff gets together and we meet in a boardroom and we go over all the construction projects that we have and we talk about problems that we need to solve and we address issues and we talk about customers, what they need and how to meet their needs and how to do a good job and how to make a profit, not a loss. And so that's what we do as a business. But yet when I joined the Republican conference and became an elected member of Congress, I could not believe what happens in the conference because it's all about altar calls and fundraising.
What's an altar call?
Well, that's calling everybody down to please come on down and donate your money to the NRCC. And that's what we saw in our meeting here. It's practically every time we're here. And everybody's name and how much money they've donated to the NRCC is all on a list and it's public. And then they hand us a piece of paper on the table that says these are our top 20 Republican members of Congress that we have to fight for and make sure they win their re-elections. Well, and then I look at that list and I go, ooh, there's about 10 of those folks on this top 20 list that either voted to impeach my favorite president, your favorite president, President Trump, or they voted to kick me off committees. And then there's one certain
And then
guy.
they come asking for your money.
Yeah, and then they want me to donate to make sure those folks get reelected.
But they don't want you to donate directly to them. They want you to donate to the party bosses so that then that money is recycled back to people who then act in contravention to the interests of the people who donated you the money in the first place.
100%. And then that money, what everyone needs to understand, will help those candidates or these congressmen and women to get reelected. And that money will work against, like an America First candidate, to replace them.
It's a total grift. And I am concerned that the influence that special interests have on our politicians is impacting the vaccine debate that we're having in this country.
Oh, 1,000%.
Big pharma controls Washington. They control major media. I mean, look, if you are watching corporate media, take a moment to observe how many of the commercials are going to big pharma. And that impacts the news coverage. It just does. And you know what? The American people know that.
Yep.
The American people know that it impacts how politicians treat big pharma.
Yep.
And so I guess, how do you think about these vaccines? And I'm not a person who criticizes those who choose to take the vaccine. If it's a right, there are people like my own parents who, for them, they're a little older, they've got other complicated medical conditions, and it was the smart decision for them. And for people in that circumstance where it makes sense, I hope that they avail themselves to the best that modern technology has to offer. But then I also meet with 20-something-year-old service members in the Army with 4% body fat. They speak 6 languages. They are very concerned. And a lot of them are, and they want to know who will fight for them.
Right.
Will enough of us in Congress actually tell truth to power and stand with our constituents, or do you believe that our people will be steamrolled?
Well, we're about to see that starting right now, because with these mask mandates being brought back to Washington, D.C., so that they can put their control clamp back down on the nation, just when our economy is starting to recover and just when we are needing, children are going back to school, they're putting masks back in place. We're going to find out which Republicans will stand up to it. And so here's my issue. I very much agree with you. If people want to get the vaccine, absolutely, they should be able to get it.
Yeah, with no stigmatization.
No, and no judgment.
Yeah.
And it should go back the other way.
Totally.
If someone says, I'm healthy, I'm not obese. Obesity is one of the highest risk factors for hospitalization and death with COVID-19. It's proven. That's science. Those are the facts. That's in the data. And so, like you said, military members, college athletes, pro athletes, most of our healthy kids, K through 12, and the working adult population are healthy enough to make up their mind, hey, you know what? I'm going to trust my immune system with this. There's about a 1% chance that the death rate there with COVID-19, I'm going to choose on my own. I'm good. No thanks. I don't need this non-FDA approved vaccine. But here's also the issue. We have to make sure as leaders that these people aren't segregated in their workplace or in school, that they're not punished, they're not discriminated against like we were being fined for masks on the House floor by Nancy Pelosi. And we have to stand up to it, and we have to do that here, which we're doing, Matt. We have to do that here so that people can do it at home, and we have to loudly support them. But we'll find out. We'll find out.
My observation is that the elites in our country who are in media, who are the pundits and the columnists, they are gaslighting the private sector. What they're saying is, well, it's totally acceptable and appropriate for big business to treat people differently based on their vaccine status. I believe that the front line of this fight will actually be with large corporations that decide to develop their own vaccine passport, to use commercial air travel, to use other things that have become common in American life. These businesses relied on the strength of the U.S. dollar, built by our people. They relied on the American taxpayer for their PPP loans, for their Fed policy to print money for them to stay open. I mean, Boeing's been bailed out so many times. I don't know why we don't just nationalize Boeing at this point, And now these big businesses are on the front lines of an attack on people who choose to make a different medical choice.
Right. And they win because they keep getting paid because the government is saying, you have to take this vaccine. So guess what? They get to keep selling their vaccines and they get to keep making money. I mean, what a contract to win, right? The COVID vaccine contract. Think about this, though. All throughout history, every time we've seen a country follow into Marxism, and as that changes, this is what happens. And it's happening right now in America. The small businesses get crushed. And it's the big corporations that get rewarded by the government, and they meld together.
Totally.
And we have seen that. Big tech has already done it. We're seeing it with big pharma. We're seeing it with, contractors, people that win big government contracts. These large corporations are
the military-industrial complex.
Military-industrial complex is a major issue. So I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism. Corporate communism destroys small businesses in America, and I have a very good example from my district. They destroy the small businesses, and the corporations gain all the control, and they can't be defeated. And they do the bidding of the government like they're doing. Biden's saying, the government's not going to mandate vaccines, but the big corporations are doing it. Corporate communism. They're putting the policy in place through their businesses on their employees and on their customers, like we've seen with the airlines.
And these are many of the big corporations that were shoveling cash at the BLM movement during the George Floyd riots. And so I've lost confidence that they're really acting in our country's best interest. I'm not against America having successful businesses.
No.
We want that to happen all over our country. But I also remember a time when the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the Vanderbilts, they weren't just industry tycoons, they were also statesmen. It was always about our country. And I really fear that with some of these globalist entities, America is less important to them than the next round of stock dividends. And that's not America first. And the neo-libertarians might be a little sensitized to that commentary, but it's just true. And I think we're at a different point in our country where enough is enough with just shouldering or shoveling the responsibilities and proclivities of government onto business, and then having business go execute it on behalf of government, but with that melded corporate communism. Number one threat to our liberty really is big government, but the number two threat is probably big business. And speaking of liberty, there are January 6 detainees right now that we've asked questions about. I don't think you and I have prejudged any particular case or any particular circumstance, but it is our job as, through Article 1 to have oversight over the executive branch. And when we've asked questions about access to counsel, access to exculpatory evidence, we haven't gotten any answers.
Nope.
And so we went to DOJ. We were hoping that with 5 members of Congress, the Attorney General or someone might have a moment for us, but share your perspective on just trying to get in the building.
I'm shocked, and I want to tell you why I'm shocked. We were left out on the sidewalk. They wouldn't even let us pass the bike racks towards the front door. They would not let us in the lobby We are 5 members of Congress. Several of us have positioned you on judiciary, Louis Gohmert on judiciary, and Paul Gosar on oversight, which both of those committees have oversight of the Department of Justice. They would not even let us in the front door while they told us that they would wait and see if someone could speak with us, even though we had let them know we were coming well in advance and had been asking questions and sending letters for months now. We got left out cold on the concrete while the radical left, when we watch them, while we're standing there, we're watching them coming down the sidewalk this way, coming down the sidewalk this way, climbing out, coming out of the crevices, coming to attack us.
A band came, a mariachi band.
Yeah, and that takes money, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't. The band members don't just say, "Hey, let's go down and play down on the street corner."
Any
and try
mariachi
to silence.
band I've ever gotten has cost money.
Yeah, exactly. And so, what I witnessed when we went to the Department of Justice, to me, was I thought, wow, we could be like the Republican members at the baseball game that were shot at by a communist that followed and loved Bernie Sanders, and no one would have cared. We were standing out there just saying, hey, we just want to ask questions, the same questions we've been asking. No one's even talking to us. I mean,
you know what I think it is, Marjorie? The left has redefined words as violence, right? Like, when you say there are 2 genders, that's not your perspective on biology. That is a violent act. Those are violent words,
that's
right? And so when the left is able to categorize our nonviolent speech to try to animate political activity in a free country as violence, what they're really doing is justifying actual violence against us or against the MAGA movement or really to facilitate the pursuit of any of those who would have an America First perspective through the lens of like national security concerns. Like there are people who are incarcerated now who I believe are only facing misdemeanors kind of or less.
That's right.
In terms of charges. And the reason those folks haven't been let out, in my opinion, is that the national security state has to justify that this is an ongoing national security threat so that they can access these exquisite authorities and then turn those authorities of surveillance and disruption against a legitimate political movement that you and I are a part of leading along with President Trump. And I think that's how we have to talk about these things. And I think that we're going to stay in the fight on behalf of just basic due process. Basic due process.
We weren't there saying free them. We're there asking questions about them. And we're also wanting to know, why isn't Antifa and BLM being looked at like domestic terrorists? What does extremism mean? Who falls in the extremist category?
I don't want to live in a world where extremism is just the way we talk about our political opponents.
Exactly.
I mean, that is a way to fuse like the criminal process with what ought to be a legitimate political process. And speaking of legitimate political speech, you and I have been subject to really some repressive activity from government entities where when we've had rallies around the country, not a bit of harm. No one's gotten hurt. No violence.
It's a party.
Yeah, people come and it's a very joyful experience. There's music, there's dancing. We give some speeches, we take photos and selfies and give a lot of hugs.
Right.
And yet when we went to California, because there are a lot of great people in California
Wonderful
who
people.
are subject to a really bad government, a lot of bad governments actually over there. And we went to share joy. And I never believed I would have seen this. City governments using their power to try to punish anyone that would even house us.
That's right.
So finally, we had to
punish
say...
a business for making money by renting out their facility to us. They shut them down.
I mean, and for me... it got to the point where if the cities kept shutting us down, we just had to go to City Hall.
Yeah.
And what we found there were a number of hundreds, actually, of really fired up Americans. And then you actually threw a beach party. And could you just share with folks how you came to the creativity of, well, if there's a place we want to get together with some friends, take some photos, give some hugs. How did you come to the proposition that it would be the beach?
We had to go to the beach because during the shutdowns in California, I was always just blown away that churches were closed. But I would see every Sunday videos just all over of Christians going to the beach. And they would worship and celebrate and be together at the beach. because it was the only place they couldn't be canceled. And so when the radical left just descended on us with everything they had, I mean,
threats of violence,
threats of violence all over the country, threatening the cities, threatening the businesses, just to silence us. We went to the city hall, which was a great idea. Oh my gosh, Matt, that was the best idea. And that quote that was behind us.
Yes, a Ben Franklin quote about the value of free speech
absolutely
in a just society.
And then our wonderful America First patriots, they only had 2 or 3 hours at notice of come to Riverside City Hall. We're going to use our free speech. Come and hear America First. And we had hundreds show up. I mean, like that. And the left still came. They were so hateful, screaming and cussing and saying all their nastiness over there, yelling at us. But then we went to the beach after that and just had that great time with some of our most wonderful supporters, because they can't cancel us there.
And it is just so important for me, for my own mental health, to get out of Washington and to get out into the country and to be with the people that we fight so hard for.
Yes.
You know, and I think that is something I look forward to definitely with you, is to, whatever the forum, whatever the venue, whatever the place, to continue to show people that we are fighting for them. And really, this is a question I've thought a lot about. You have redefined the role of a member of Congress, because I'm unaware of any other circumstance where literally upon your swearing in, I mean, I don't know that the ink was dry on your election certificate before the Democrats removed you from the Education and Labor Committee. If they came back to you now and said, Congresswoman Greene, we've had enough. You've overseen the entire workflow on the floor of the House of Representatives. You've showed up at committees you aren't on and been able to make your case more than actual committee members. You're like the air traffic controller of the America First movement with this perspective. And what we'd really like to do is put you back on the Education and Labor Committee, because then you'll be in 6-hour sessions on, the latest developments on instructional materials for 7th graders, and they'll send you to
CRT.
a field hearing to Susquehanna to spend time at a high school, or whatever they'll send you to do. It would be very different if you were on that committee than how you spend your day today, animating a movement and really becoming one of the leaders of it. Would you take the committee assignment back if they offered it?
Hell no. Far more effective on the outside. We're far more effective going out all over the country and encouraging moms and dads to fight their school boards. These passionate mothers that care about their children so much are going to fight CRT out of the schools to run for school board positions. Won't they
be our future Congress members?
Absolutely.
Right.
And we can't wait for them to join us.
Right.
I mean, we're far more effective on the outside instead of sitting there on Zoom committee meetings where Democrats don't wear pants. Going out and encouraging everyone to not lose faith, don't lose hope. We have this. This is our country. We just have to take it back, and it's easy to take back, because here's what I figured out, and I figured it out really quickly. Washington, D.C. is like one of those snow globes, but the glass is so thin. And I say that because they all just serve each other, and the American people have all the power. You want to know why? They have the money, the donations. They have the votes, and they have the freedom right now. And so this is why we have to keep going and doing our rallies and getting that message across, is they can't cancel us because we refuse to be canceled. And so right now, while Democrats and Nancy Pelosi and them are just running this place however they want, I would never waste 1 second on a useless committee.
Well, I have said publicly that if I were in charge of the House of Representatives, I'd have you run in the Budget Committee because you have a very project management style of approach that would be really good throughout the enterprise of government. Well, Marjorie, this has been a great conversation. You are a great firebrand and inspiration not only to me, but to many of my constituents. And I think President Trump says it best. The best is yet to come.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for watching Firebrand. We'll have new content each and every week, but make sure you're subscribed on your podcast listening platform of choice, Facebook, Rumble, and definitely YouTube. We'll be here. We hope you join us. This is Firebrand.